Hi.
The sudden loss of a loved one is among the most excruciating experiences one can endure, often more overwhelming than the grief that accompanies a terminal illness. When death comes slowly, there's time to brace our hearts and minds for what's to come. However, my husband Richard's unexpected passing shattered me completely. It happened so suddenly. He slipped on the ice one morning, breaking his leg. Tragically, a fragment of bone marrow entered his bloodstream, causing a fatal pulmonary embolism. In the blink of an eye, I was a widow at 47. My name is Nora. Richard, 5 years my senior, was my anchor, my partner through life's joys and challenges. Together, we raised 3 children who are now scattered across the country. Maria, our eldest, has settled in Hawaii, while Jessica, our younger daughter, resides in Maine. Our son Timothy lives in Louisiana. Each of them has children of their own, and their responsibilities keep them busy. Visiting them often to help with my grandchildren is not a simple task. As I looked ahead, the uncertainty of what my life might become weighed heavily on me. My children had their own families and lives far away, and I was left grappling with a future that felt unclear and lonely. I come from modest beginnings. My mother, a divorced woman raising 2 children on her own, worked as a waitress at a respectable restaurant to make ends meet. My father vanished without a trace after their divorce to avoid paying child support and alimony, a disappearance far easier to accomplish in the pre-September 11th era. Despite her struggles, my mother ensured that my brother and I had a decent upbringing. Brandon, my older brother, eventually joined the police academy after high school. He served with distinction for 25 years before retiring to work as a security manager at a racetrack. Today, he enjoys a happy life with his wife, and they are proud grandparents to 2 girls. As for me, I started my working life as a shop assistant at a clothing store. It was there that I met Richard. At the time, he was an apprentice at a chemical firm and had recently graduated from college. He frequented the store, and after a recent breakup, he worked up the courage to ask me out on a date. I had dated before, so saying yes wasn't a big decision. Our relationship blossomed quickly, and at the age of 20, I became his wife. Our journey as a married couple began with a little help from Richard's older brother, Tyler, who gifted us a small sum of money as a wedding present. This allowed us to establish ourselves in a lovely home. Over time, I pursued training in cosmetics and hairdressing, enabling me to start working at a beauty salon once our youngest daughter turned 12. For 5 years, I was an employee, but when the owner decided to retire, Richard and I seized the opportunity to buy the salon. While we had most of the money saved, a small bank loan covered the remaining cost. It took us just 5 years to pay it off. The salon grew into a thriving business, employing 12 women. Richard, on the other hand, built a successful career as a manager at a local chemical company. We were comfortable, financially stable, and proud of what we had achieved. Richard's brother Tyler, 16 years older than him, was even more successful. As an architect and businessman, he amassed significant wealth through his construction firm and various investments. Though he was much older, Tyler shared a close bond with Richard and their younger sister Deborah, who had moved to California with her husband and daughters. Tyler's generosity was a cornerstone of family gatherings. At Christmas, he gave sizable monetary gifts to both Deborah and us. Though we reciprocated with thoughtful presents, there was no denying that Tyler's wealth far outshone ours. He was adored by all the children, ours included. Unfortunately, Tyler's heavy smoking led to lung cancer, and by the time it was diagnosed, it was too late for effective treatment. Richard stood by his side during his final days, ensuring he wasn't alone as he passed away in hospice care. After Tyler's death, his 2 sons took over the family business, one leveraging his business administration degree and the other following in Tyler's footsteps as an architect. Richard and I took pride in our children's achievements as well. All 3 attended college far from home. Maria and Jessica pursued degrees in business administration, while Timothy specialized in oil industry engineering. With their own careers and families, they had built lives independent of ours. It was just me and Richard, until his sudden passing left me utterly alone 2 years after Tyler's death. Following Richard's passing, The inheritance was divided according to his will. Each of our children received 1/6 of our savings, while I inherited the remaining half, along with our home and a lakeside cabin. But there was an unexpected twist. Richard's will included a clause instructing me to meet with a lawyer for additional information. This peculiar request left me both puzzled and intrigued. I scheduled an appointment with the lawyer, eager to uncover what my late husband had intended. I arrived at the lawyer's office on time, feeling a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Thomas Williams, the attorney handling the matter, was a seasoned professional who had dedicated over 40 years to family law. After introducing himself, he ushered me into his office, closing the door behind us and gesturing for me to sit at the table. Following a brief expression of condolences for my husband Richard's passing, the formalities began. "May I see your identification and the inheritance order?" he asked. I handed over the documents, and he nodded after a thorough inspection. "Everything is in order. I confirm that you are Mrs. Nora Robinson, the wife of the late Richard Robinson." Confused, I asked, "I don't understand this clause in the will. What does it mean?" The lawyer leaned forward, his expression serious. "Before I explain, I must request your complete discretion on this matter. You will have the final say, and I will execute your decision. However, your husband made it clear, both in person and in writing, that you are capable of managing this delicate situation. He also emphasized the importance of secrecy. The weight of his words unsettled me, and my mind raced with questions. The lawyer continued, "This isn't a secret your husband created. He was merely the executor of a deeply personal last request." Taking a deep breath, I pressed him further. "Was this request from Tyler, my husband's brother?" "Yes," he confirmed. "It was Tyler Robinson's confidential request. Allow me to explain, but please understand that this is a very sensitive matter." Reassuring him of my discretion, I said, "I can keep a secret." "Very well," he replied, opening a file. Tyler owned a construction company and had numerous employees, including a woman who became his personal assistant. Over time, their professional relationship evolved into a romantic affair. Though the affair lasted less than a year, it had lasting consequences. Tyler eventually ended the relationship and transferred her to another department. But by then, she was pregnant. The pieces began to fall into place, and I muttered, "They were both unfaithful." The lawyer, maintaining a professional tone, responded, "I have no official opinion on the morality of the situation, but I do have a duty to disclose the facts. Tyler left a letter for Richard, which I will now share with you. Once the terms of the will are fulfilled, this letter will be destroyed. No copies exist." He handed me the letter. At the end, Tyler's signature stood as a stark reminder of his final plea. I read the letter twice, my astonishment growing with each word. Its content revealed an affair that had remained hidden for years. "Dear Richard, Bella Scott, my former personal assistant, was married with 2 children when we began our workplace affair. After nearly a year, I ended the relationship and reassigned her to another department. It was only after her departure that I learned she was pregnant. Suspicious, I hired a private investigator to look into her family. DNA samples confirmed that her youngest child, Jennifer, was my biological daughter. At the time, Bella and her husband Carl were unaware of the child's true parentage. Given that Carl and I shared similar features, light brown hair, deep blue eyes, there was no reason for suspicion. Jennifer resembled her mother, making it easy for Carl to believe she was his. As the years passed, I continued to monitor their lives discreetly. By the time Jennifer was 11, it was clear she adored Carl, who had become a successful investor. Carl left the real estate market at its peak and wisely transitioned into alternative fuels, which was a booming industry. Though I felt responsible for Jennifer's upbringing, I hesitated to act while I was alive. However, after reading about lawsuits where biological fathers were ordered to pay significant child support retroactively, I created a fund to address this. I set aside $250,000 for Carl as a gesture of gratitude for raising Jennifer and another $250,000 for Jennifer herself to support her future. Additionally, I allocated $100,000 for you, Richard, as compensation for fulfilling this request. The fund will also cover all associated costs, including legal fees, taxes, and investigative expenses. I ask you, Richard, to keep this matter entirely confidential. My wife, my sons, and the Scott family must remain unaware of this situation. Most importantly, Jennifer should never learn about her true parentage unless absolutely necessary. If possible, I suggest waiting until she graduates high school before revealing any evidence to Carl. Ultimately, I trust you to decide the best course of action with the guidance of our lawyer. Sincerely, Tyler Robinson. As I finished reading, I sat in stunned silence. The gravity of the situation overwhelmed me. I looked up at Thomas Williams, unsure of what to say. He met my gaze with a calm expression. "You're not alone in this," he assured me. "Your husband had already commissioned the same private investigator to conduct a recent follow-up. As of last year, the Scott family remains completely unaware of the truth. Jennifer still idolizes her father, and their bond is strong." I couldn't help but think about the strange twists of fate that had kept this secret so well hidden. I didn't know what the right solution was, so I chose to stay silent for now. "Mrs. Robinson, I understand this is a lot to process," Thomas said gently. "Take some time to think about it. I'll provide you with all the necessary reports, so you can make an informed decision when you're ready." The lawyer handed me the 3 reports, which included photos, videos, and written summaries, all stored on a thumb drive. "What's your opinion?" he asked. "We have enough time, almost 2 months until June." I responded, "All right, I'll review them at home." He issued a firm warning. "Please, do not make any hard copies or additional CDs of the content. Tyler's wish for absolute secrecy must be respected." I nodded in agreement. With the reports in hand, I left the office, aware that I was carrying the figurative skeleton of my late brother-in-law. At home, I planned to examine the reports and try to piece together this complex situation. Meanwhile, let's explore the story from Carl Scott's perspective. I cannot fathom how I failed to notice what was happening during that time in my life. Whether the affair lasted a year or longer, I was utterly oblivious. Like many husbands who are content and trusting, I was blind to the betrayal. My life began in a well-to-do middle-class family. As the youngest sibling with 2 older sisters, I was utterly spoiled, not only by my parents but by my sisters as well. Perhaps this cushioned upbringing made me less perceptive to certain realities. I graduated from college with a degree in financial economics and secured a job at a local bank. My father, the owner of a modest investment firm, encouraged me to gain experience in the corporate world before joining the family business. So, I started as a simple employee and worked my way up. During my college years, I dated casually but never met anyone serious until I encountered Bella Logan at a family barbecue. She was a friend of my eldest sister's sister-in-law, and we were both single at the time. We quickly became an item, and before long we were deeply in love. Bella was a strikingly beautiful woman, tall, with brown hair and captivating green eyes. She had recently graduated with a degree in business administration and started working at a local company. Our relationship blossomed, and 6 months later, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We had a grand wedding, and for our honeymoon, we traveled to Bali, the tropical gem of Indonesia. With the help of both families, we purchased a lovely home, taking on a small mortgage. Soon, we began building our family. Our firstborn, Tyler, arrived within the first year, followed closely by Julie. Bella decided to stay at home to care for the children, while I worked hard to provide for us. Life was comfortable, and our marriage seemed solid. Our sex life was ordinary for a couple with young children, and I adored being a father. I was a man of simple pleasures. I didn't care for hard liquor, enjoyed reading National Geographic to broaden my horizons, and kept active with swimming and water polo, a sport I had loved since my school days. Even in the winter, when the weather made golf impossible, I would swim in the heated pool at our local facility. We were fortunate to have our own swimming pool in the backyard, which added to the charm of our family life. After several years at the bank, my father asked me to join the family business as a financial advisor. "Son," he said, "you've learned enough from the corporate world. It's time to prepare to take over." He offered me a good salary, and I accepted. After 2 years of hard work, my father restructured the company, promoting me to CEO while he took on the role of president. To show his trust, he distributed shares of the company, 5% to each of his 3 children, with the promise that I would inherit 60%, while my sisters would split the remaining shares equally after his passing. When our son Tyler was 11 and Julie was 10, Bella decided she wanted to return to work. She found a position as a personal assistant to the owner of a local company. Initially, she seemed to enjoy the job, but after about a year, she was reassigned to a different department. Bella confided that her relationship with the owner had soured, and she disliked her new role. Shortly afterward, she discovered she was pregnant. When she shared the news, I didn't question whether we should have the baby. We had always believed that if an accident happened, it was simply part of life's unpredictability, and we would face it together. Abortion was never a consideration. Bella continued working until her 3rd trimester, after which she returned to being a full-time mother. Our youngest daughter, Jennifer, was born and quickly became the apple of my eye. As our older children grew up and went off to college, Jennifer remained at home. Tyler pursued a career in financial planning, much like me, while Julie set her sights on becoming a pharmacist. We supported them wholeheartedly in achieving their dreams. Meanwhile, Jennifer, our youngest, was a true daddy's girl. She idolized me, and our bond grew incredibly strong. Sometimes Bella grew frustrated with Jennifer's attachment to me, but this only deepened our connection. Our family seemed picture-perfect to anyone looking in from the outside. I couldn't have imagined the hidden truths lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly happy life. To be honest, Emily held a special place in my heart. Of all our children, I loved her the most. When Emily was 11, Bella found a job at a firm where she became a supervisor. She was happy in her new role, while our older children had already graduated, found stable jobs, and settled into fulfilling lives. Tyler, our son, was thriving in the corporate world, gaining valuable experience, while Julie worked as an industrial pharmacist until she decided to stay home after having children. Both found wonderful partners, and soon Bella and I embraced our new roles as grandparents, frequently babysitting Julie and Tyler's children. Emily was about to graduate when I received an unexpected phone call from a woman named Nora Robinson. She insisted on meeting me in person at my office, emphasizing the need for confidentiality. I was taken aback by the specificity of her request. Confidentiality was a standard part of my work managing investments, but this felt different. She had even informed my colleagues that she needed to speak directly with the CEO. Such requests were rare, as most clients' needs were handled by my employees unless it involved significant or urgent matters for major investors. Curious, though not overly concerned, I agreed to meet her. From Nora's perspective, the situation was equally complex. At home, I carefully reviewed the private investigators' reports. They painted a picture of a loving family, with Emily as a quintessential daddy's girl, especially after her older siblings had left home. The latest report showed Carl as a healthy, handsome man with an approachable demeanor. The videos and photos captured his warm personality and deep bond with Emily. The written summaries confirmed that neither Bella nor Carl had any suspicion about Emily's true parentage. Emily clearly adored her father, preferring him to her mother. I pored over the reports multiple times, rewatching the videos and analyzing the photos, feeling the weight of the decision before me. This wasn't just a problem to solve. It was a secret that, once revealed, could shatter lives. I knew that exposing the truth would be akin to opening a floodgate, releasing a torrent of emotions and consequences into the lives of strangers. Tyler's will had explicitly requested that Emily never learn the truth, but I knew Carl had to know. The question was how to handle it with the least harm. After discussing the situation with Thomas Williams, the lawyer, we agreed on a possible solution. The sum of $250,000 allocated for Emily could be presented as a graduation gift from her father. This approach would honor Tyler's wishes while preserving Emily's perception of her family. However, there was no avoiding the fact that I needed to tell Carl the truth. Despite everything, I found myself drawn to Carl's personality as described in the reports. He seemed like a kind and likable man, though I harbored no romantic intentions. My husband's recent death had left me emotionally fragile, and this task stirred a sense of duty within me, but nothing more. I arranged a confidential meeting with Carl at his office. His secretary scheduled the appointment, and I arrived promptly. When I entered his office, he greeted me warmly and offered me a seat. He was as handsome in person as he had appeared in the investigator's videos. I took a deep breath and began, "Mr. Scott, it's very difficult for me to explain this situation. It's not a simple matter of investment. It's a family issue, and I'm hesitant about how to convey it sensitively." He nodded with polite patience. "Take your time, Mrs. Robinson. Start from the beginning." I continued, "My husband passed away in January, shortly after New Year's Day. He carried the burden of fulfilling a request in his brother Tyler's will. That burden has now fallen to me, and it involves you." Carl looked at me, puzzled but attentive. "You and your daughter, Emily, have been included in Tyler Robinson's will. Each of you is to inherit $250,000. His expression shifted rapidly, from surprise to anger and, finally, to a deep sadness that I would never forget. A tear rolled down his cheek as he quietly muttered, "I love Emily the most." That moment was profound. The man before me, so composed and professional, revealed a vulnerable side that touched me deeply. I felt an inexplicable connection, a moment of human empathy that was unshakable. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Yes, your brother-in-law was my wife's boss, and now I understand," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "You don't know how difficult this must be for me to hear, but I appreciate your honesty." I nodded, feeling the weight of the revelation myself. "Mr. Scott, there is DNA evidence confirming Emily's paternity. I feel like the bearer of bad news, but I want you to know this decision was not mine. Tyler's will dictated these actions, and I've done my best to honor it." He remained quiet for a moment before responding. "Mrs. Robinson, I've absorbed the shock of this news. We'll work together to fulfill Tyler Robinson's wishes." His voice choked with emotion. "But let me be clear, Emily is my daughter. It doesn't matter whose DNA she carries. I've been her father for 19 years, and that's what counts." I could feel his pain and resolve. "I think the best course of action," he continued, "is to give Emily the money as a graduation gift. She doesn't need to know anything else. That's the only way to protect her from this truth." In that moment, I saw a man willing to endure heartbreak to preserve his family's happiness, and I respected him deeply for it. "What's your opinion on this?" I asked Carl as we sat in his office. He took a moment before replying, "Emily won't be an issue. We can arrange the money as a graduation gift for her. But as for my wife's past," sensing the tension in his voice, I interjected, "In that case, we can organize a meeting at the lawyer's office to finalize the details." He nodded. "All right, we'll arrange a date by phone. That way, my family stays unaware of everything." With that, we said our goodbyes. As I left his office, my emotions were in turmoil. The meeting had been enlightening, but it also left me in the same state of grief I had felt after my husband's death. I couldn't shake the unexpected feelings I had developed for Carl, nor the sorrow I felt for the betrayal he had endured from his wife. My love for him felt hopeless, a dream I couldn't allow myself to pursue. I was sure his marriage would survive this challenge, but at least poor Emily would remain shielded from all the ugliness. From Carl's perspective, the situation took on a different weight. When Nora left my office, I was left alone with the skeleton that had just been dragged from the closet. My feelings toward Emily didn't waver for a second. She had always been my favorite among the children, and the DNA evidence changed nothing for me. If I had known the truth of her paternity when she was born, I would have immediately divorced Bella and avoided any obligation to pay child support. Legally, our state's family law wouldn't have considered Emily my child. But now, after nearly 2 decades of raising her, none of that mattered. Emily was my daughter in every way that counted. She was the reason I stood firm, even as my perspective on Bella shifted drastically. My marriage had been built on a lie, but my bond with Emily was real. Bella was a separate matter. I was successful and financially secure, working for a thriving firm owned by my father. At 50, I was healthy and capable of living independently. Emily would soon be leaving for college, so there were no logistical concerns about staying together for her sake. Why, then, should I continue living a lie? The answer came to me almost immediately: Emily. I decided to wait until after her graduation to initiate divorce proceedings. I wanted to ensure she had a positive last summer at home, free from the disruption of family conflict. The graduation gift of $250,000 would be a wonderful gesture, but I wanted her final months at home to be filled with love and stability. Once I had made my decision, I acted quickly. I contacted a skilled divorce lawyer and scheduled an appointment. Though I intended to divorce Bella, I resolved to delay the process until Emily was at college. My plan was clear. I would give Emily the time and care she deserved before reshaping my life. I even decided to keep my upcoming plans for a surprise winter holiday in Australia to myself for now. Let Bella continue to play the role of the good wife a little longer. I could mirror her act for a few more months. A week later, I attended the meeting at Tyler's lawyer's office. Nora and Mr. Williams were already waiting when I arrived. After exchanging pleasantries, Mr. Williams confirmed my identity and offered me the chance to read Tyler Robinson's letter. "I must inform you," the lawyer said, "that the letter cannot be copied or removed from this office. You may read it here, but that is all." I agreed to the conditions and he handed me the letter. Reading it felt like staring into the face of betrayal. My wife's year-long affair, Emily's biological paternity, and Tyler's attempts to conceal the truth all came rushing at me. I took a deep breath and reflected on the proposed plan to present the money to Emily as a graduation gift. It was a sound idea and I decided to proceed with it. Handing the letter back to the lawyer, I stated, "I agree. Emily will receive the money as a graduation gift. She doesn't need to know about the affair, the DNA, or any of the rest. Let's keep this clean." The lawyer nodded. "I believe this is the best course of action." "I'm glad you agree, Mr. Scott." Nora remained silent, but her expression caught my attention when I made my next request. Could my own inheritance of $250,000 be delayed? I planned to divorce my wife, and I would prefer not to disclose this inheritance to her during the proceedings. Nora's reaction was subtle but telling. A faint flush crept across her cheeks, though she quickly regained her composure. I couldn't help but notice her subtle fragrance, a gentle, feminine scent that lingered in the air. She was a beautiful woman, with striking light hair and blue eyes. For a moment, I admired her, but I kept my thoughts in check. Mr. Williams, oblivious to the silent exchange, replied, "Tyler Robinson anticipated such possibilities. The settlement for your portion has been arranged to be received a year after Emily's graduation." Satisfied with the arrangement, I prepared to move forward. The road ahead was clear. Honor Tyler's wishes, protect Emily, and rebuild my life on a foundation of honesty and freedom. The lawyer explained, "Mrs. Robinson will receive her net $100,000 only after the successful disbursement of both the graduation gift and your share of the inheritance." Nora smiled at me, her delight barely concealed. "We'll likely need several meetings to fulfill the terms of my brother-in-law's will," the lawyer added, glancing at us for confirmation. Nora looked at me with a mix of anguish and sympathy. "Yes," she said softly. "We'll organize the next meeting before Emily's graduation gift is transferred." The lawyer reassured me, "All funds, including taxes and office fees, have been accounted for in Mr. Robinson's arrangements. The amounts you and Emily receive will be net, and the graduation gift can be deposited directly into your daughter's bank account at your discretion." I took a deep breath and replied, "I'll announce my decision to divorce Bella about a week before Emily leaves for college. After giving Emily the graduation gift, I'll tell my children the truth, that Bella had an affair before Emily's birth." Nora's pupils dilated slightly, and I noticed a wave of sincere sympathy radiate from her. She told me later that my expression mirrored her own emotions, a connection she couldn't ignore. She said, I think Carl and I should stay in touch so I can assist with the process. I want to earn my $100,000. The lawyer nodded. Mrs. Robinson, you may assist as a participant in this process, but legally, the financial transactions will go through our office. The next meeting will finalize the details of Emily's graduation gift. You can coordinate with Mr. Scott to arrange these meetings. Nora and I exchanged a smile, and for the first time, I felt a warmth between us that hinted at something more. As we stood to leave, I found myself inviting her for coffee. To my surprise and delight, she accepted. We found a quiet coffee shop and settled into a corner table. Nora broke the silence first, her tone sincere. I'm so sorry to bring you such difficult news. I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I appreciated her honesty. It's been a challenging week. I've decided to start divorce proceedings, but I'll wait to deliver the papers until the end of the summer. I don't want to ruin Emily's last holiday at home. Her eyes sparkled with admiration, and she offered a kind smile. You're a wonderful father. Emily is lucky to have someone who loves her so deeply. Her words stirred something in me, and I couldn't help but notice her gentle flush as she spoke. The DNA thing doesn't matter after 18 years, I began. If I had known the truth when Emily was born, I wouldn't have hesitated to leave Bella. But after raising her, she's my daughter in every way that counts. Nora's face softened with genuine happiness. I'm glad Emily will be spared from all of this. She's lucky to have you as her true father. But Bella, she'll lose you forever. I nodded, my resolve firm. I'm healthy, and I can move on without her. But what about you? What did you think of your brother-in-law after learning all of this? Her expression turned thoughtful. I was shocked by his betrayal, not just of my sister-in-law but of his own sons. I agree with the lawyer. This secret must remain between Bella, you, me, and the lawyer. Tyler is gone, and there's no need to drag this into the open. Her candidness gave me the courage to ask more about her. You're a widow. I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have children? Thank you, she said with a touch of sadness. I do, 3 children, all grown. They live far away, and each has children of their own. I rarely see my grandchildren, so I've been feeling quite lonely. Her honesty struck a chord with me. I wanted to learn more about her. What do you do for a living? I own a beauty salon, she replied. It's a big operation with 12 employees. It keeps me busy. The conversation lightened, and Nora surprised me with a question. How do you handle lunch at work? I usually grab something from a nearby restaurant or snack bar, I answered. Sometimes, if I'm swamped, I'll order delivery. She hesitated before suggesting, maybe I could visit the same places you frequent. We could discuss the matter there, whenever it's convenient. Her suggestion caught me off guard, but I appreciated her bravery. I smiled and said, that's a great idea. I usually eat alone, so it would be nice to have company. Her face lit up, and she said, I'll wait for your call tomorrow morning. With that, we said our goodbyes and returned to our respective routines, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. There was something undeniable about the connection we had formed. For most days, I found myself staying at home, overwhelmed with sadness. The unexpected chance to connect with someone new became a much-needed push to reclaim a full life. That serendipitous opportunity came in the form of an attractive man, Carl, who was considering divorcing his wife. I knew I was incredibly fortunate. For a woman in her 40s, meeting a decent man was no small feat. Thankfully, I had kept myself in good shape, and many said I looked at least 10 years younger. My late husband had once told me that he wouldn't want me to live a lonely life after his passing, and those words gave me strength. Carl was a kind and honest man. I remembered how, during our first encounter, he had openly expressed his admiration for me. He was warm, straightforward, and we shared an undeniable chemistry. However, I approached this budding relationship cautiously, aware that moving too fast might jeopardize everything. My feelings for Carl only deepened after our initial meeting, and soon, I realized that I was falling completely in love with him. Yet, I wondered if my love was merely an unattainable dream. The next day, Carl called me, and we met for lunch at a small Thai restaurant. The day after, we opted for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and an Italian restaurant was our destination the following day. As we began to make these lunchtime meetings a regular occurrence, we grew closer. Although one afternoon was skipped due to Carl's business meeting, the following week we shared a wonderful meal at a steakhouse. These simple rendezvous became an important part of our connection, slowly building trust and understanding between us. Carl and I took the time to learn about each other's families and pasts. He later confessed that he had been hesitant about approaching me too quickly, fearing he might mirror the actions of his unfaithful wife. Despite not having a prenuptial agreement, he wanted to be fair to her during their impending separation. Our turning point came during an intimate lunch at a small, empty Indian restaurant. Carl was already seated when I arrived, and he stood to greet me. After exchanging warm pleasantries, we let our guards down and shared a brief but passionate kiss, which was interrupted by a polite cough from the waiter. Sitting at our table, we were relieved to finally express our true feelings. I told Carl, "I can wait 2 months for you." He nodded, understanding my sentiments. "I don't know how I could cheat on my wife," he admitted softly. "I never have," I replied, sharing his values. We laughed together, both feeling the weight of our honesty. Carl explained his commitment. "Until the divorce papers are served, I want to remain faithful. I need to tell Bella that I was loyal until our separation." I admired his integrity and assured him that I could wait. We joked about practicalities, and I suggested he skip renting a motel when the time came. "There's plenty of space in my home," I offered playfully, "but my bedroom should be your first stop." Carl smiled warmly, appreciating my understanding. When I asked what he'd like for his first lunch at my place, he thought for a moment and replied, "Fried shrimp sounds good." The idea made me smile, as it reminded me of meals I had shared with my late husband. I decided to stock up on shrimp, eager for the life we were planning together. Carl wanted to handle the transition thoughtfully. He aimed to give his youngest daughter, Emily, a beautiful summer vacation before making any drastic changes. His love for her deepened my feelings for him. During one of our lunches, he revealed that he had arranged a substantial graduation gift for Emily, a transfer of $250,000 via his lawyer, to take place after the divorce papers were served. I admired his foresight and kindness as a father. The plan for his departure was set. Carl would confront Bella on Thursday, spend 2 nights in the guest room while packing his personal belongings, and then move in with me on Saturday morning. We kept in close contact over the phone during this time, and I respected the pain Bella was likely enduring. Even so, I couldn't help but feel grateful that Carl had chosen to build a future with me. The day finally came. Watching from my window, I saw Carl's car pull up. Before he could ring the doorbell, I had already opened the door, ready to welcome him into our shared future. Carl's perspective. I arrived home earlier than Bella that day, which gave me some time to collect my thoughts. Emily was out with her boyfriend, and since they were both adults, I didn't concern myself with their plans. As I waited in the living room, I felt calm but resolute. This was a decision I had made months ago. The divorce papers were ready, and I intended to have one final, honest conversation with Bella. When she walked into the room, her expression shifted as she sensed something was wrong. She looked at me, concerned, and asked, "Carl, what's the matter? Why are you sitting here like this?" I met her gaze steadily and replied, "Sometimes the past catches up with us in ways we don't expect." Bella's face reflected her confusion, and she stood motionless, staring at me. I continued, "Bella, I'm divorcing you, but I believe you deserve to know the reason why. I want a divorce, and I believe you deserve to know why," I stated firmly. Bella's eyes widened, and she asked with a hint of hysteria, "Do you have someone else? Is it some younger woman? A side chick?" Her choice of words annoyed me, and I responded curtly, "Yes, there is someone, but she is neither young nor a side chick, and I wouldn't have even considered her if certain truths hadn't surfaced." Bella's tone grew defensive, almost frantic. "What truths? What skeletons are you talking about? I don't have any secrets. I'm innocent of whatever you're accusing me of," I calmly countered. Do you remember Tyler Robinson? For a brief moment, I saw her composure falter. She quickly regained her defiant stance, replying, "He was my former boss, and I never had an affair with him or anyone else." It was time to deliver the decisive blow. "You're not innocent," I said, pulling out the evidence. "I have DNA proof that Emily is biologically his daughter. Stop denying it." My words hit her like a ton of bricks. She froze mid-sentence, then started sobbing. "Yes," I continued. "Emily's biological father is Tyler Robinson. That's a fact, and it's pointless to deny it. You can only decide whether to call it a one-time mistake or admit it was a long-term affair. And don't even try to lie further. I've read Tyler's letters. He detailed your year-long relationship." Bella collapsed into a chair, her tears flowing freely. I pressed on. "I stayed faithful to you and to my vows. If I had been unfaithful too, we might have had a chance to reconcile. Mutual forgiveness. But that's not the case, Bella. You cheated, and I'm leaving you." She began wiping her eyes, trying to salvage what she could of the conversation. "I can see you've made up your mind," she said quietly. "I only had that one affair during our marriage. Believe me or don't, but that's the truth." I wasn't swayed. "Maybe it was only one affair," I replied. "But I don't trust you anymore. Years ago, before I met you, I knew a 60-year-old woman who wanted to cheat on her longtime husband with a younger man. She spoke of her husband as if he were worthless. That young man she approached? It was me. That's why I know trust once broken doesn't easily return." Bella wept, realizing there was no chance for reconciliation. I continued, "If I were terminally ill, like your late lover Tyler when he was dying of lung cancer, I'd stay. You'd take care of me as a way to atone for your betrayal. But I'm healthy, Bella, and I can start over with someone else." Curiosity flickered through her tears. "How did you figure it out?" she asked hesitantly. I avoided mentioning the financial details. "Tyler willed $250,000 to Emily," I explained. "I want to use that as a graduation gift for her. I'll handle the transaction during the divorce proceedings, but I need your agreement." Bella, still crying, replied, "Tyler and I ended things long ago. He transferred me to another department, and I tried to rebuild our marriage. You may not believe me, but I loved you. I wanted us to carry on together. After Emily was born, I thought she was yours. I was happy, truly happy with you. Life has been cruel to me." Wiping her tears, she asked, "Will you tell Emily the truth, that you're not her biological father? You love her the most, don't you?" "I won't tell Emily," I said firmly. "She doesn't need to know she was conceived from an affair. I'll tell her I discovered your infidelity, but I'll never reveal Tyler's role as her biological father. The money will be my gift to her. No complications, no unnecessary pain." Bella nodded, resigned. "I understand. I know you're leaving me. I wish you happiness, and I agree about the graduation gift for Emily." She walked to the bedroom in tears, leaving me alone in the living room. That night, I waited for Emily to come home. When she arrived, she looked surprised to see me waiting. "Dad, why are you still up? I'm 18 now, you know," she said teasingly. "Emily," I began, "I have something important to tell you. Your mother and I are divorcing." Her expression turned serious. "Why, Dad? Your mother had a workplace affair years ago, before you were born," I explained. "I found out about it 3 months ago, but chose to wait until after you left for college before taking any action." Emily was thoughtful for a moment before asking, "Couldn't you both try counseling?" I shook my head. "Emily, this happened during a time when I was working hard to transition the business from your grandfather. I was unaware then, but now I can't live a lie." Emily sighed, her voice almost resigned. "So, you've made up your mind?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I'll inform Tyler and Julie of the divorce tomorrow. But, Emily, I want to give you something to make this transition easier. A graduation gift of $250,000. Tears welled in her eyes. "Dad," she said, embracing me tightly, "no amount of money can replace a happy family. I understand why you're doing this, but I'm sad for what we've lost." Her tears soaked my shirt as I held her. After she went to bed, I stayed in the living room, reflecting on my past with Bella. I felt relief that Emily would be spared the deeper truth of her conception. My thoughts soon shifted to Nora and the new life we would build together. The days ahead felt like an adventure waiting to begin. I moved to the guest room to prepare myself for the transition to Nora's house. In the following days, the story shifted to my perspective. On Saturday morning, Carl arrived at my house. We shared an intimate morning together, making love for the first time, and afterward, I prepared fried shrimp for lunch. The weekend was filled with passion and connection as we spent most of our time making love, but I also made sure to showcase my cooking skills. By the time the new week began, Carl was leaving for work from my house, and he had embraced my earlier suggestion of sleeping in my bedroom. My home became our home, and my bedroom naturally transformed into his bedroom too. On Monday morning, before leaving for work, I asked Carl what time he would return to our house. He seemed deeply touched by the phrase, and his expression warmed my heart. Meanwhile, Carl began breaking the news of his divorce to his children. Initially, they were shocked and hoped for reconciliation, but Carl explained that Bella had been unfaithful before Emily was born and that he could no longer stay in the marriage. Although saddened, his children ultimately accepted his decision and directed their anger toward Bella. Despite this, they maintained regular visits with her, especially since she was emotionally fragile. Bella eventually agreed to a fair 50-50 division of assets during the divorce. Emily received the $250,000 graduation gift Carl had planned for her, while Carl took time to visit his older children at their homes and spend time with his grandchildren. He kept our relationship discreet until the divorce was finalized, which I had advised. Carl even remarked that my emotional intelligence was as high as my IQ, a compliment I cherished. Emily, however, began visiting us on weekends when she came home from college. While she clearly preferred her father's company, I was careful not to overstep boundaries. I treated her with respect, offering her a complimentary beauty makeover at the salon I frequented. To my surprise, she later accepted the offer. After her haircut, she seemed more relaxed and friendly toward me, and I believed it was her way of showing that she had begun to accept me into her life. Carl's older children navigated the difficult terrain between their parents during the divorce proceedings, trying to remain neutral. 3 months after the process began, Carl finally received the divorce decree. To celebrate, he took me to an exclusive restaurant where he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. With a heartfelt proposal, he asked me to be his wife. I was overwhelmed with happiness and hugged him tightly before saying yes. We shared a passionate kiss, sealing the moment, and Carl revealed he had also purchased tickets for the Magic Flute Opera in Chicago for the following weekend. I admitted to him that I had never been to a classical music opera before, but I was eager to experience it. Over the coming week, I read up on the Magic Flute to prepare. On Friday, we drove to Chicago, where we stayed at a hotel for the weekend. A cab took us to the theater, and I found myself mesmerized by Mozart's music and the essence of the opera. Later, I reflected on how the characters in the opera could almost mirror Carl, Emily, and Bella in a modern context. As our lives together unfolded, Carl introduced me to his parents, sisters, and close friends, while I introduced him to my mother, my brother's family, and even my late husband's family. We decided on a small, intimate wedding, and Carl surprised me with his plan to spend our honeymoon in Australia. The idea thrilled me, and I looked forward to the adventure. On our wedding day, my children and grandchildren attended, but Carl's older children chose not to come, out of respect for their mother's feelings. We understood their decision and held no resentment. Emily, however, surprised us by attending the ceremony. At the reception, she was warm and friendly, which meant the world to both Carl and me. My brother, Brandon, walked me down the aisle, while Carl's best friend served as his best man. My best friend was the maid of honor, and my youngest granddaughters delighted everyone as the flower girls. Saying our vows and hearing Carl's voice filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. I danced with my new husband through much of the evening, and when no one was watching, I shed a few tears of happiness. My mother beamed with pride at seeing me happy again. Carl's family welcomed me with open arms, and even my friends remarked on how radiant and content Carl and I looked together. The day after our wedding, we flew to Perth in Western Australia for our honeymoon. Carl wasn't fond of distilled alcoholic drinks but loved high-quality wines, so he planned a visit to the renowned winery regions south of Perth. We rented a car and drove to Bunbury, where we stayed in a charming hotel arranged by a travel agency. The area was close to the Geograph Bay and Margaret River wine regions, where we explored local vineyards, tasted exceptional wines, and marveled at the beauty of the towering Kerry tree forests. The honeymoon marked the beginning of a wonderful new chapter, and I couldn't wait to see what the future had in store for us. These trees, some of the tallest flowering trees in the world, left us in awe. As we drove through the Western Australian countryside, mobs of kangaroos often appeared at night, while flocks of sheep dotted the landscape during the day. At specialized restaurants offering native dishes, we sampled kangaroo, crocodile, and emu meat, savoring the unique flavors. We also swam and bathed in the pristine waters of the Indian Ocean, enjoying every moment of this extraordinary honeymoon. The travel agency had arranged a 3-day excursion to Uluru, which we reached via a small plane from Burlington Airport. Before returning home, we spent 3 wonderful days in Perth, strengthening our bond. We had already learned each other's intimate habits, but this honeymoon added new layers to our love and deepened our connection. Shortly after we arrived back home, Carl received a phone call from Emily. Her voice was emotional, almost breaking into tears, as she said she needed to come over immediately. While waiting for her, we unpacked our luggage. When Emily arrived, she rushed to Carl, wrapping her arms around him and sobbing, "Daddy, I love you so much." Tears filled her eyes as she continued, her voice shaking. "I don't care about any DNA tests. I was so glad to be at your wedding. But now," she told me, "Bella revealed the truth about my biological father. She thought it would change how I feel about you, but she doesn't understand. Nothing could ever make me stop loving you. You've always been my dad." Carl held her tightly, speaking gently. "Emily, you've been my daughter your entire life, and that hasn't changed. You'll always be my daughter." Emily, still crying, added, "She told me the graduation gift wasn't from you but from Tyler Robinson, her lover. She thought that would make me feel differently about you, but she doesn't know what it means to me that you've always been my dad." Standing quietly in the background, I felt a mix of sadness and admiration for Emily's resilience. Carl tried his best to console her. "Emily, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought keeping the truth a secret would protect you." Emily, wiping her tears, replied firmly, "This DNA thing doesn't matter to me. What matters is love and the bond we share." Her words moved both Carl and me to tears, and I began to see Emily in a new light. I admired her strength and wished for her happiness. Emily continued clinging to Carl, sobbing, "I don't want to go to her house anymore. I won't take my kids to see her. She thought I'd turn away from you. How could she think that?" I stepped forward and gently guided Emily to sit down, taking a seat beside her. "Emily," I said warmly, "you are always welcome at our house. You'll get a key so you can come whenever you like. I also hope we can be friends." She looked at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Nora. I know we'll be friends." Later, I showed her to one of the rooms in the house that belonged to my older daughter. Carl joined us as Emily flopped onto the bed. "If you like, this room can be yours whenever you're here," I said with a smile. "It's your space." "Thank you, Nora," she said softly. I could tell she needed some time alone, so Carl and I left her to settle in. I embraced him tightly afterward and whispered, "You have an incredible daughter, and I'm so lucky to be part of this family." Bella's attempt to use Emily's biological paternity as revenge had backfired spectacularly. Instead of driving a wedge between Carl and Emily, it had only strengthened their bond. Carl confided in me later that he had considered revealing Bella's year-long affair to his children but ultimately decided against it. He felt they had punished Bella enough, particularly since Emily now wanted little to do with her mother. Tyler Robinson's will was finalized, and both Carl and I received the $250,000 and $100,000 he had allocated. However, being financially secure already, we decided to donate part of this unexpected windfall to charity. Emily, when not at college, often stayed with us, and over time we became close friends. Her affection for Carl remained strong, and to my pleasant surprise, she also grew to like me. I began to see her as Pamina from the Magic Flute, wishing for her to find her own Prince Tamino. Carl and I continued to attend operas, including Die Walküre, Aida, Carmen, Madame Butterfly, The Barber of Seville, and The Marriage of Figaro. Yet, the Magic Flute remained my favorite, and it held special meaning for us. To celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary, Carl bought tickets to see the Magic Flute at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. After the performance, we visited my daughter Jessica and her family in Maine. While watching the opera, I couldn't help but imagine Carl as Sarastro, Emily as Pamina, Bella as the Queen of the Night, and myself as someone who wished only for happiness and peace for the family. Over time, our love only grew stronger, defying the usual pattern of fading affection in most marriages. Unlike my first marriage, which had stagnated over time and been ultimately destroyed by betrayal, my life with Carl flourished. Carl admitted he still harbored resentment toward Bella, but he felt her failed attempt at revenge had been punishment enough. Emily's decision to distance herself from Bella was perhaps the most painful consequence of all. For now, we focused on our happiness, leaving the past where it belonged. My revenge was complete. I had found a marvelous new wife, enjoyed the love and admiration of my 3 children, and managed to hold Bella accountable for her betrayal. If Bella hadn't tried to damage my relationship with Emily, she might have faded into my past with fewer unpleasant memories. Instead, her actions only served to deepen the consequences of her mistakes. I couldn't fully understand Bella's behavior at the time, but Nora explained it clearly. Bella was consumed with envy. She couldn't stand to see us happy as a couple, while she remained a lonely adulteress in her children's eyes. My generosity, choosing not to expose the full truth about her infidelity, meant nothing to her. Her bitterness drove Emily closer to me, solidifying the bond we shared. I was astounded by the depth of affection in Emily's heart. Not only did she shower this love on me, but later, Kevin, her husband, also became the recipient of her fondness. Bella, on the other hand, received none of it. My 2 older children were initially furious with Bella after discovering the truth about Emily's paternity. They supported me fully, making me their primary parent. Over time, they forgave Bella and reconnected with her, even bringing their own children to visit her. However, Emily did not share their forgiveness. For 3 years, she avoided Bella entirely. Bella eventually remarried. She wed Kevin Wood, a divorced man, and my older children attended the wedding out of courtesy. Meanwhile, my life with Nora flourished. My son Tyler left his job to join me as my deputy in the family business. Sadly, my father passed away, and my mother followed him a year later. They never had the chance to meet Kevin, Emily's husband. Emily didn't find a long-term partner during college. After graduating, she became a grammar school teacher and returned to our city, where she met Kevin, a general medical practitioner. They started dating and their relationship blossomed. Emily and Kevin got married, but Bella was not invited to the wedding. Kevin had endured a difficult childhood. His biological father was an abusive alcoholic who brought home a prostitute one night, prompting Kevin's mother, Katie, to file for a restraining order and divorce. Katie raised Kevin and his sister on her own for years before meeting David, a divorced man with children from his first marriage. David was a remarkable stepfather who earned Kevin's admiration. Kevin and Emily shared a deep appreciation for their non-biological fathers, David for Kevin and me for Emily. This emotional connection drew them closer. Nora and I met Kevin's family, including David and Katie, who were incredibly warm and kind. Kevin's sister had also found a good partner, and their family dynamics were built on resilience and mutual respect. Nora and I embraced our roles as grandparents. We traveled extensively, visiting Europe, China, and Peru, as well as Nora's children, who lived in Hawaii, Louisiana, and New England. Kevin and Emily eventually had 2 children, a boy named David and a girl named Pam. Although I had biological grandchildren from my older children, they lived far away, and I saw them only occasionally. Emily's children, however, were always near, and I felt a special bond with them. Nora, too, reveled in her role as a true grandma, cherishing the closeness she had with Emily's kids, especially since her biological grandchildren lived far away and she could only connect with them online. We later learned that Bella's second husband, Kevin Wood, had developed bladder cancer. Bella cared for him devotedly throughout his illness, but sadly, he lost the battle. While I didn't like Bella, I couldn't hate her either. Her dedication to her second husband during his struggle with cancer softened my view of her. I became neutral about Bella, though Emily remained estranged from her mother. Emily never brought her children to Bella, leaving Nora and me as their sole grandparents on her side. Emily never mentioned the DNA connection again, and I knew she considered me her true father. Despite my biological connection to my older children's kids, Emily's children became my favorites. Bloodlines, it seemed, didn't define our bond. Over the 10 years we lived as a family, Emily and I grew even closer. Kevin and Emily's 2 children brought immense joy to our lives. Their son, David, and their daughter Pam held a special place in my heart. My biological grandchildren, now teenagers, were friendly and respectful but lived far away, making visits rare. Emily's kids, however, were always present, treating me as their grandparent in every sense of the word. Nora and I cherished this unique and loving family, built on bonds that transcended blood. Although I liked Carl's other grandchildren, they were truly only his biological grandchildren, not mine. They visited their grandmother Bella, but Emily had not visited her mother since the day Bella revealed the truth about her biological father. My husband became the only grandparent in Emily's children's lives, and while I knew Emily had decided never to see her mother again, she never discussed their last meeting with me. Kevin was an exceptional father, and Emily was fortunate to have found the perfect partner for her. Kevin's understanding of complex family dynamics came from his own background. He had a loving stepfather who stepped in after his biological father had abandoned the family. Carl and I met Kevin's mom, Katie, and his stepfather, David, on several occasions, and we found them to be warm, friendly people we genuinely liked. Over time, Emily became like a fourth child to me, though I never explicitly said so, especially not to Emily. Her children, David and Pam, made me their grandmother by choice, and they began calling me Grandma. The first time Emily and later Kevin called me Grandma, I felt a surge of happiness. I truly embraced the role, and I felt I had earned the title in every way. One January day, while I was working at the beauty salon, I received a phone call that left me shaken. Carl had slipped on ice and was being transported to the hospital with a broken leg. The circumstances reminded me of my first husband's death, and panic set in. I left work immediately and rushed to the hospital, where Emily was already waiting for me. She ran to me, hugged me tightly, and said, "Mom, don't be afraid. You're not going to lose my daddy. Embolisms are rare with fractures." Hearing her call me Mom for the first time brought tears to my eyes, and I was overwhelmed with relief when the doctors assured us Carl was in good condition. Emily's kids, my grandchildren, soon arrived and ran toward us, shouting loudly, "Grandma, Grandpa is in surgery." Emily gently corrected them. "Kids, we're in a hospital. You need to be quiet." She and I exchanged smiles and waited together in the emergency surgery waiting room. When Carl was moved to the plaster room, the surgeon explained the situation. "Mr. Scott's ankle is broken. We secured the fibula with 2 screws," he said. I asked, "When can I take my husband home, doctor?" He replied, "The temporary screws will need to be removed before he can receive a walking cast. For now, he'll have a bed cast and stay in the hospital ward. After the fracture heals, we'll do another X-ray in about a month to determine if he can transition to a walking cast. He'll also need physiotherapy once the walking cast is removed. It may be about 2 weeks before he can go home with crutches." Emily reassured me, saying, "When Dad comes home, I can bring the kids to your house and stay with him so you can go to work." I thanked her, grateful for her support. Later that evening, Carl was moved to his ward, and Emily took the kids home. Carl's older children, Tyler and Julie, called to check on their father and told us they would visit him the next day. I was preparing to leave when the door opened, and Bella walked in. Carl and I exchanged shocked glances, knowing she had been living alone since the death of her second husband, whom she had nursed with admirable care. Bella greeted us and then, to my surprise, hugged me. "I know you don't want me here," she said, "but I felt like I needed to come. I heard about Carl's accident from Tyler and Julie." She looked noticeably older than us. I replied, "Carl is doing well. He'll be home in 2 weeks." Carl added, "I slipped on some ice getting out of my car. It was just bad luck. Tyler is managing the business while I recover, and I have my laptop here to help if needed." Bella continued, "I'm glad it wasn't more serious. I came because I want to have an honest conversation. I knew Julie and Tyler would visit tomorrow, and I didn't see Emily's car in the parking lot. I thought this was the best time to talk to you both alone." Carl and I looked at each other, surprised. Bella went on, "You don't know how much I hated you both after you left me, Carl. I was an emotional wreck. I cried constantly and could barely function at work. I felt like you were unfair, like you didn't believe me when I told you I was faithful to you after Tyler." Carl interrupted gently, "Bella, it doesn't matter anymore. That's water under the bridge. If you have something to confess, go ahead." Bella hesitated but continued, "When you left me for Nora, I thought my world had ended." I remained silent as Carl addressed Bella in a calm but firm voice. "You may have been faithful for the past 19 years, but the fact remains. You had a long-term affair. A short, accidental tryst doesn't happen without consequences." His tone was composed, devoid of strong emotion, as he laid out the reality. Bella hesitated before responding, "I didn't think about it like that at the time." She paused and added, "Kevin helped me understand your perspective. It's strange, but I began to see things differently through my second husband." She turned toward me and said, "Nora, I'm Miss W now, and you're Mrs. Scott. Without Kevin, I feel so lonely." I replied softly, "I'm so sorry for your loss, Bella." She nodded, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Nora. Hearing those words from you means a lot. They're comforting. But after your wedding, I hated you both so much. Even though I agreed not to tell Emily the truth about her biological father when Carl announced the divorce, I couldn't hold back my bitterness." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I wanted to destroy the bond you two shared with Emily, so I revealed the secret." Carl interjected firmly, "Emily came to us immediately after we returned from our honeymoon in Australia. She told us everything you said." Bella carried on, her voice filled with regret. "I thought I could break the connection you had with her. I admitted that the graduation gift was from Tyler. But instead of pushing her away from you, she got angry with me. She shouted that the DNA meant nothing to her, that the only things that mattered in life were true love and the bonds we build. She told me that you, Carl, had proven those values by giving her the graduation gift, even though you knew the truth." Bella's voice faltered as she continued, "She told me I had no right to ruin the relationship she had with you. And then she said the most painful words. I wasn't her mother anymore, even though I gave birth to her. She said she'd never visit me again, and she's kept her word. I've lost her forever." Carl and I remained silent, aware of Emily's painful confrontation with her mother. Bella began to cry and admitted, "You're the winner, Carl. I behaved horribly and deserved this outcome." Turning to me, she said, "Nora, do you know that Emily has been calling you Mom for over a year now? Even when you weren't around, she referred to you as her mother." Julie told me this. I smiled faintly and replied, "Today, for the first time, Emily called me Mom. She told me at the hospital." Carl glanced at me with interest but stayed quiet. Bella looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Nora, I want to tell you something important." Her voice broke as she continued, "I gave up my mothering rights to Emily. She's your daughter now." Her words struck deeply, and I could see she was seeking closure. She began crying again and added, "That's why I came here today, to thank you both. You've been generous to me in ways I didn't deserve." Carl and I exchanged a glance, recognizing her honesty in this moment. Carl spoke up. "Bella, I never told the kids the full extent of your affair with Tyler. I thought it was enough for them to know about the infidelity without going into the details. I wanted to preserve some of your dignity." Bella wiped her tears and responded, "I'm grateful for that. My connection with Julie and Tyler was only rebuilt because of Kevin and, in part, because of you. When Emily figured out everything, she told Julie and Tyler. They came to me, angry and hurt, demanding the truth. I tried to frame it as a short affair and workplace harassment, and they accepted it reluctantly. They visit me now, bringing their children, but I've lost Emily forever." Carl replied calmly, "You're lucky that lie worked. If it hadn't, you might have lost all three of them. I never wanted to badmouth you because I knew our children would need to maintain a connection with both parents. I thought what I revealed was enough. They knew you were the only one who cheated." Bella nodded, her face filled with sorrow. "You were right. My revenge plan was foolish and it backfired completely. Emily hasn't spoken to me since, and I know she never will. She's chosen Nora as her mother. I've lost her for good." Carl added, "You tried to destroy what Emily and I had, but instead you strengthened it. Your plan was your downfall." Bella looked at me again, tears streaming down her face. "Nora, believe me when I say this. Emily is your daughter now." We remained silent as Bella wept, tears streaming down her face. After a few moments, she began speaking again, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know how to express my gratitude to both of you. If you had told the entire truth to the children, even Kevin wouldn't have stayed in my life. I'm thankful you didn't. I managed to keep the respect of my older children, and I had Kevin, even if only for a time." Carl and I exchanged astonished glances as Bella continued. "For 2 years, I was utterly alone and in a deep depression. I spent hours surfing the internet and eventually came across a dating website for older people. That's where I met Kevin. It was such an unexpected and fantastic experience. Kevin had been through his own betrayal. His wife had not only cheated on him but had affairs with multiple men, including one of his closest friends. Compared to her, I felt like my actions were minor. If I was just a cheater, she could have been called something far worse." Bella paused before adding, "After my marriage with Kevin, I can honestly say I was a faithful wife. But before him, I was a cheater. When I met Kevin, he had only been divorced for 2 months, and we started corresponding. I told him the basics. I had divorced due to workplace harassment by my boss, that I had a daughter from that affair, and 2 other children with my ex-husband. I admitted I had left the job and been faithful to my husband for 19 years after the affair. When the truth started to surface, Kevin disappeared for 3 months after my confession. But then, out of the blue, I received an email from him." Carl interrupted with a pointed remark. "You were a liar." Bella, visibly shaken, defended herself. "Yes, I lied, for my future happiness. But I was faithful to you for 19 years after that." Carl replied, "I believe you were faithful for those 19 years, but the evidence shows you were a cheater before that." Bella's relief was palpable. "Carl, you don't know how much it means to hear you believe me. I thought, after all those years of loyalty, I deserved to sit with you in the garden, watching the sunset with our grandchildren. But Nora is the lucky one now, and I can't help being jealous. I don't hate you both anymore, but I truly thought Emily was your daughter, Carl." Carl remained silent, so I asked, "Bella, considering Kevin's history as a betrayed husband, how did you manage to connect with him at all?" Bella explained, "We met through the dating site, and after a few dates we became intimate. At first, he thought I would just be a short-term girlfriend. For me, those dates were like medicine for my depression. I was honest with Kevin about my past, about Emily, about you, and about how I had tried to destroy your relationship with Emily but ended up losing her instead. He understood me, and we grew closer," Carl admitted. "When you upset Emily, I almost told the children everything, but I decided Emily's response would punish you enough." Bella sighed and continued, "Thank you both for your generosity. Kevin was a wonderful man. I introduced him to Tyler and Julie, and they accepted my explanation that the affair with Tyler was brief and the result of workplace harassment. I told them Emily's conception was unintentional. If Kevin had known the full truth, he never would have proposed to me. She hesitated before adding, Julie and Tyler attended our wedding. I was a faithful wife to Kevin, and we were happy together. I became a good aunt to his grandchildren and a caring stepmother. But then, Kevin developed bladder cancer. By the time the symptoms were detected, it was too late. The cancer had metastasized throughout his body. We fought the disease together, but he lost the battle. Carl spoke honestly. We heard about how you nursed Kevin from our older kids. That's when I stopped hating you, Bella. Bella began to cry again, and I said gently, Carl told me he couldn't forget your betrayal, but he no longer hates you. Bella wiped her tears and responded, I took care of Kevin like I would have cared for you, Carl, if you had been ill. Do you remember the day you confronted me? You told me that if you had been dying, you wouldn't have divorced me. Do you still remember that, Carl? Yes, I do, he replied. My older children forgave me because they saw how I cared for Kevin. They admired the way I fought by his side against the cancer. Thank you both for allowing me to regain their respect. It means everything to me. She paused and added, but I know I lost Emily forever. After another moment of silence, Bella stood and said, I don't want to disturb you any longer. I hope you heal quickly, Carl. Thank you both for listening to me. Carl replied, It's good that you came to the hospital. Thank you. Please take care of yourself. I stood with Bella and hugged her. As we embraced, she whispered, Don't forget, Emily is your daughter now. We said our goodbyes and Bella left. I stayed a little longer with Carl. After a moment, he said softly, Emily is our daughter now, officially. The next day, Emily spent the afternoon with her dad after lunch, while I headed to work. Later that day, Tyler and Julie came to visit Carl in the hospital. Over the following days, Emily and I were at the hospital daily, providing support for Carl, while Kevin, Tyler, and Julie joined us on weekends. The 2 weeks passed quickly, and soon Carl was fitted with a walking cast. When the day came for his discharge, I brought him home from the hospital. The next morning, Emily arrived bright and early, just before 9, bringing my grandchildren along with her. Her presence allowed me to go to work, knowing she was there to assist Carl. Despite Tyler's excellent management of the business, Carl was determined to return to work after 2 weeks, no matter what. The following day, I planned to head into work a bit later so I could spend some extra time at home. It was a wonderful time, with Emily and the grandkids visiting us every single day. True to his word, Carl returned to work 2 weeks after being discharged, starting with half-day shifts. Emily took on the role of chauffeur, driving him to work in her car after lunch, while I picked him up afterward. When we arrived home that evening, the kids ran up to their granddad with excitement, eager to see him. Emily, however, pulled me into the living room. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around me in a heartfelt hug and whispered, Thank you, Mom. Her words struck me deeply, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. She looked at me knowingly and said aloud, Yes, you are my true mom. Overcome with emotion, we hugged tightly, and Emily began to weep as well. My grandchildren, sensing the moment, ran over to us, wrapping their little arms around both of us. I glanced over at Carl, and there he was, tears glistening in his eyes as he watched the scene. It was a moment of pure love and connection, one that solidified the bond we all shared as a family.
See ya.